Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, the Plantations Labour Bill 1973 was introduced in the Rajya Sabha on the 6th March 1973. Then it was referred to a joint committee of both the houses, and this joint committee submitted its report in 1975. Now we are discussing this bill today after 6 years of the submission of the report by the joint committee. Hence, the bill would not be able to deal with the present day expectations of the workers of the plantations. The original act in regard to the plantation labor, namely the Act of 1951 itself, provided various welfare measures for the plantation labor. But unfortunately, the planters nonchalantly violated all these provisions for welfare measures. The main question, therefore, is the question of implementation of the provisions of the Act. Mere amendments will not improve the position. There is no provision in the present bill also as to how these provisions can be implemented and what the government is thinking in terms of implementing these provisions. In some cases, even the government officials who are deputed for the purpose of inspecting the gardens, they themselves side with the planters. If government officers themselves side with the planters, hence we should devise ways and means and adopt measures so that the provisions which are made in the Act and the present bill are implemented properly. Sir, the provisions in the present bill fall short of the expectations of the working population in the plantations. In the present bill, it has been suggested that the acreage of the plantations in regard to which this act will be applied will be reduced to 5 hectares. But this is also not sufficient because under this also the owners, the planters will take shelter and many of the plantations will still remain uncovered. This should be further reduced to 2.5 hectares. So far as compensation for house collapse is concerned, it has been said here that if the occupant of a house is directly responsible for the collapse, he will not be entitled to compensation. Under this provision, sir, the employers will take shelter and deprive many workers of getting compensation. Sir, it is known to everybody that the plantation industry is the biggest foreign exchange earning industry. The productivity of this industry in India can increase only if the labor are contented. Contented labor alone can improve the efficiency and productivity of the plantation industry. So the need of the hour is not to bring such piecemeal legislation. What is needed today is a comprehensive bill which should deal with all aspects of the working conditions of the plantation labor. The need of the day is to introduce such a bill where workers will have full participation in managing the gardens, and this plantation industry should be nationalized immediately. Sir, Assam is one of the most important tea producing states in the country. There formerly the tea gardens were owned by the Britishers. Now the Indians have purchased those gardens. After these gardens have gone to the hands of the Indian planters, the situation has not improved, rather it has deteriorated. The efficiency of the gardens has deteriorated. Even the local people and educated tea labor youths are being deprived of getting employment in the gardens. Therefore, steps should immediately be taken to nationalize this industry. Here, sir, I would like to inform the House that in 1978-79, the ruling Janata Party in the Assam Assembly had adopted a resolution unanimously for nationalization of tea industry in Assam. If government is not willing to nationalize the entire plantation industry, I would request that the government should take early steps at least to nationalize the tea industry in Assam. It is a very vital matter for the economic self-sufficiency of Assam state, and it is very important from the point of view of increasing efficiency and productivity of the gardens also. I would like the government not only to pass this amendment bill which I have risen to support, but also to ensure its implementation as best as it can. Otherwise, getting it passed and keeping a copy of it in the library or elsewhere will not improve the conditions of the plantation workers. I want proper implementation, proper enforcement of the law, and I want that desired amenities and facilities should be provided to these workers, and it should be ensured that employers do provide these amenities. When this question of joint committee was taken up in this house, our late friend Mr. Bhupesh Gupta was there, and he also voiced his feelings and said that these plantations should be acquired by the government. These are generally foreign owned establishments and they are the centers, at least in Assam, of anti Indian activities. These plantations deserve to be taken over by the government as early as possible. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, I would like to speak on this bill in the interests of the rapid economic growth in the country. If the nation grows from strength to strength economically, leading to eradication of the degrading and disheartening poverty of the people of India, the workers of this nation would also benefit and they would also go above the poverty line. Sir, I would like to mention here that the plantation crops, as understood by the term so far, namely coffee, rubber, tea, and cardamom, have been giving this nation substantial amount of the much coveted foreign exchange annually. It must be noted that coffee exports alone have given our country during the last 5 years over rupees 1000 crore in foreign exchange by way of export earnings and export duties. I must also bring to the attention of this house that the famed tea industry in India today has become a sick industry affecting lakhs of workers and the tea planters. Sir, we ought to know that in the agricultural sector, the plantation labor is the best organized one and is getting nearly the same treatment, facilities, and amenities like the industrial labor. Sir, coming from a plantation district of Karnataka, I sincerely agree that the welfare measures provided in the Act must be faithfully implemented and strictly enforced. But I cannot subscribe to the view taken by some that the planters generally are exploiters and are inimical to the interests of their own workers and that they must be dealt with severely. Sir, most of the planters of today are educated and they know that contented labor is conducive to productivity and peace in the estates and therefore would like to provide all the welfare measures and amenities to the workers. Sir, I would like to point out some of the very draconian, discriminatory, and invidious urban directed amendments made in the Plantations Labor Amendment Bill 1973. Sir, the Plantations Labor Act is sought to be applied now even to holdings of 5 hectares and above employing 15 persons and more. Originally in the bill, through before the Joint Committee, it was sought to be applied to holdings of 6.5 hectares and above. It would be realistic to make an amendment to the present bill to raise the size of holdings from 5 hectares to 6.5 hectares. Sir, we must bear in mind the economic viability of small plantations of 5 hectares and the financial capacity of the small planters to fulfill the obligations cast on them to provide housing and crush facilities. Those small planters in some cases are unable to provide themselves with houses and medical care as good as those intended for their workers in the bill. I am sure that good many small holdings will go into liquidation, unable to bear the burden when the prices fall, as in the case of tea today. I would emphatically say that Clause 13 is not only draconian but discriminatory, and it is most harsh and killing to the farming community of India whose hands feed and clothe the people poor and rich. Sir, I strongly feel that the punishment with both compulsory fine and imprisonment is too severe for violation of a welfare legislation covered by the Act. For economic reasons and financial incapacity, the debt-ridden employer, particularly a smallholder, may be unable to discharge the obligations such as providing type design house, crutches, medical facilities, etc. In such cases, there is no point in sending the landholder to jail and collecting a fine from him for every day of default.